Welcome to Human Powered, the podcast about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. I'm Trenton Moss, and today I have Annabelle Walters, Global Chief People Officer at Jellyfish. Annabelle, hello.
Hi, Trenton. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you so much for joining. So Jellyfish is an integrated digital marketing business, and your role there, Annabelle, you oversee the talent and people strategy for over 1,600 people across 30 offices in 22 countries. So let's dive straight in. Annabelle, how do you define high performing across such a large business?
Performance for me is all about impact. It's not about always being busy and visible, because being busy and visible doesn't mean you're getting things done. And so for me, high performance is, what do you do? How do you get it done? And what impact does it have to the business? It's quite simple. I don't like to complicate when we're talking about high performance, because some people can talk about all these different nuances around what makes a high performing team, and they all are true. But if you wanted to break it down and make it really simple so people can go, okay, what can I take away from this? What does impact look like? What does that mean? It's what adds value to the business. So if I talk about high impact and what that looks like, understanding where the business is going is super important. You have to know the direction of the business. What are the business goals? What does your capability or discipline trying to achieve to help the business grow and drive, especially in this era of AI? That's so important, because what high performance looked like 5 or 6 years ago is very different now, because you have to relook at your job. So for example, if I take my team, high performance could be great business partnering, you run processes end to end, but actually high performance now is building agentic tools that can do some of that heavy lifting and admin work for you. And that for me is a high performing team, because I have to layer that blend of AI over it now as well. So I think being part of the change and understanding what the change is rather than the change happening to you is, for me, the best way to get on board and move with it. And I would hate to lose great talent that could be part of that journey moving forward if they don't take the time, because it starts with self-education. You can't expect businesses to just deploy all the training around it. You have to want to get on board with it as well.
Can you tell me a bit more about what you're doing at an organizational level to make sure that everyone in the business is part of the change?
So we have a specific tool actually that we use, especially for around our creatives, and we're bringing together all our learning ecosystems across the Brand Tech Group. So Jellyfish is part of the Brand Tech Group with Oliver Marketing Agency and Pencil and 55 DP6, etc. And there is a massive untapped learning ecosystem across the group that we sell training to our clients. So when we're talking about how do we get ahead of that curve, we're already doing it. We already got the content, we create it, we sell it. So how do we make sure that our employees are also on that same journey? We are selling tools to our clients that help deliver impact and value. So we have to make sure that our people also have access to it before, because the framework that we're trying to build is, what do people need to know? How do they use it? And then how do they sell it, essentially? And that is different for every capability and discipline across the business, but we have a massive ecosystem. So when I think about the 7,000 people across Brand Tech, this is a very privileged position to be in, to have access to all of these platforms and tools and systems and training facilitators and people with all the knowledge of these tools that have been created. We have to make sure that people know what they need to know to do their job. If they need to be able to use something, we need to make sure that they have access to be able to use it, and teach people to know how to sell the value of it to our clients. And I don't mean just sell anything, but it's like understanding the value of something. You have to know it, use it, and then you can be able to transfer that to our clients, I think is really important. And it's exciting, right? Because the other thing that we're trying to do is build out an internship to invest and build in the AI marketeers of the future, because we have that ecosystem. So trying to codify it is the priority right now across the Brand Tech Group, and there's a great steering committee of people that I'm part of that's building that out, that we'll be able to hopefully launch before Cannes as well.
One of the things you mentioned a few minutes ago around high performing was that, I think the first thing you said was that you need to understand our business goals and make sure that you're driving towards those. The scale of Jellyfish and indeed the Brand Tech Group is quite large. how do you make sure that everyone in the business does understand the business goals and that their role is aligned around those?
Understanding our business goals is about understanding our clients' challenges, because our goals are our clients' goals at the end of the day. What are the challenges that our clients are trying to solve? What issues are they facing? And how can we help them with all the data, all our creative, our client transformation piece, all of that coming together? They become our business goals. And that will be different, but it also could be quite similar for some of our clients as well. We've got the fantastic roster of clients across the group. Jellyfish specifically have over 400 clients. But I would say our top 20 clients are the ones where if you can fix their problems, you can probably find solutions for everybody else as well, because they're our biggest clients. And our goals are always going to be our clients, to fix our clients' problems and provide solutions and deliver impact. So our goals are always going to be, what are our clients' problem, identifying them, and how can we close that gap for them? So if I talk about client management and what that may have looked like 5-6 years ago, the industry now isn't in the same growth point as it was 5 or 6 years ago, because budgets are tighter, the economy, etc. We all know. So what client management needs to look like, it can't just be maintenance, it needs to be transformation. So you have to look at, and examples can be looking at what our clients' budgets were, what challenges were they trying to solve 5-6 years ago, because the challenges are probably not that different, but the budgets are different. So looking at the way we used to do things, okay, how did we used to produce creative work? What are the tools that we're using now? And showing them, okay, before we had to create this campaign with a budget of X, that meant flying around the world. And now we can build this in a tool that looks exactly the same for a fraction of the price, which means we can reinvest what you would have cost on all the production of that into something else.
It sounds like there's lots of change been going on in Jellyfish the last few years in response to all the industry change. Tell me a bit about how you've empowered the leadership team to in turn empower the rest of the 1,600 person business to go on this journey.
I think Jellyfish do a really good job of bringing people together to discuss change and what's going on. Is it perfect? No, but no one's ever going to get it absolutely perfectly right, because people are the variable in change. So how they feel can change on a day-to-day basis, and everyone goes through that change curve very differently. But I think the one thing that we do very well is we come together and we talk and discuss things and the impact it has on our people. And for me, that is such a rarity and something that really resonates with my personal values in terms of why I enjoy working at Jellyfish as well, is that we really do discuss the impact of change on people. So we empower our leaders to explore those conversations with each other. We challenge each other all the time, but then we also take ownership with our own teams to make sure that they are doing the same thing and having those discussions with their leadership teams and so on and so forth to discuss that change, you know, make sure people understand what's going on, how it affects them, and also give the people opportunity to say, if this isn't for me anymore, I want to leave, or I don't want to be a part of it. And that's also okay. I'm not a fan of holding people hostage to anything. We can all be adults and have the conversation about, this isn't for me anymore. That's okay. But I always think honesty, kindness over niceness. I don't think that preserving people's feelings for the sake of the truth is always the best route, because I think you do people disservice. But I think empowering people with the truth, with what the change looks like, when it's going to happen, how it's going to impact them or not, and the benefits of it as well, because impact doesn't mean negative. Impact can also mean super positive things as well, and opportunities for people to evolve their skill set. And I think focusing on the future is better than looking back in terms of how things was. And there's a phrase, like they say, that the windscreen mirror is bigger than the rear view mirror for a reason, because focusing on the future it gets you further than keep looking behind you, because then you can never move forward. So I think that empowerment comes from really open discussions, understanding how things impact people, and just being really transparent and answering people's questions about how they feel about things, but also being really clear on where we're going and why we're going there.
And it sounds like that openness and transparency is just baked into your culture.
It is, absolutely. We run town halls on a monthly basis. Then our capabilities run town halls, our regions run town halls. I run a town hall for my global team as well. We talk about things. I'm constantly soliciting feedback. we're rolling out a survey, an engagement survey, which Jellyfish hasn't seen in a couple of years. And it's the first brand tech group-wide survey. So getting a sense on where things are right now would be fantastic, because it's important that we understand how people feel. And it's not about getting a score, but it's about participation. Because for me, high participation shows high engagement, and it means people care. And then you can put an action plan on the back of that, or you can understand where your gaps in knowledge or issues are and things like that. So I never care for a specific score, but I care for high engagement in things, because if you get an engagement score participation of 30%, it's never going to be truly reflective of how people feel, because it's only 30% of the population. Whereas you get 70, you can go, yeah, you can say the majority of people feel like this. And then it makes the action plans off the back of that super meaningful. The culture at Jellyfish is fantastic. Like, I've never worked somewhere where people genuinely care about how things impact people.
So over the years, what has Jellyfish done to create that really fantastic culture?
I would say they really invested in things that benefited their people early on. I would say as well that I think that level of openness and transparency is something that is fed throughout the business. And I think when people feel like they have a voice in a business, it really speaks to the culture. Having an open voice and transparency where people understand what's going on in real time and can ask questions in real time, and leadership doesn't feel unapproachable, and you can go and speak to the CEO or the MD of your country without any issues. It doesn't feel too corporate. The hierarchy feels quite relaxed and flexible. That is definitely felt, and that is felt in the language even used around the business. We've got quite a flat structure around the business, and whilst we might need some hierarchy in some places, for the most part, people feel like things are attainable, their careers are reachable, things are not outside of scope for them. And I think when people feel like the business invests in them as people in terms of the things that are meaningful to their lives, and they feel part of the conversation in terms of how the business is moving forward, that creates a great wake up and feel like, oh, I don't even know what the CEO looks like, or we see them once a year in a global all hands. That doesn't happen here. Those conversations happen on a monthly basis. And that means that person has taken time to sit down and speak and create content and speak to people about things that impact them, and share the financials and share the client wins and share the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. So seeing how much effort goes into that, when bigger organizations might do that once a year, we do that way more frequently. Sometimes I think you can be taken for granted about how rare that actually is in a business of this size.
Wow. So having this real culture of openness and transparency in such a large business makes it feel like such a nice place to work, I'm guessing. To what end, though? What are the business benefits of having a culture like that?
I think happy people do good work. When you enjoy where you're working, you enjoy working with your manager, you enjoy working with your team, you feel like you can have an open conversation and it's not going to be used against you. I don't want people in fear of raising their hand or sharing their opinion because of how I might react to something. It's important that I'd sit there and listen, because my point of view is just my point of view. I can try and be as objective as I can, but ultimately, if I just do things with my own point of view, then I'm creating things in a vacuum. And I see that across our leadership team. They do solicit feedback. They do ask people. They care about how people view things. And whilst they might not take everything on board, they do take all those types of things into consideration. And for me, that's so important, because leadership can look like that, or it could look the complete opposite. And that might work for some people. But I think when you create a culture that has that led from the top, people enjoy working here. They enjoy working here because they have a voice and they can say things and without fear of repercussions. No question is a stupid question type of thing. And that's how people learn and grow. If you've got a question or an idea and someone shut it down every time, at some point, that's a conditioning to just do your work and shut up. Like, you're not going to say anything or ask any questions. Whereas if you're encouraged to be curious, I think questioning is a sign of intelligence, in my opinion. So I think if you're curious about why things are being done and how things are getting done, whether you agree with it or not, you're furthering your understanding of wherever you are and the environment that you're in.
And you talked a bit about the fact that you're launching the engagement survey. And I know you're also in the process of changing the performance management process. Tell me a bit about why you're doing that and what you're hoping to achieve.
I'll start with the culture piece. The brand tech group is going through change, right? We've just hired these regional CEOs across the regions that are informing the direction of travel. We are moving together as a collective of agencies that can solve our clients' problems. Insert name of agency here, Jellyfish, Oliver, 55, whatever it is. We have a ton of services and skill sets at our disposal. So that is a massive transition, right? Because the brand tech group has grown through acquisition. Jellyfish has also grown through acquisition over the years as well. And understanding what culture is right now, because you're going to have your micro cultures across your different agencies. You're going to have your micro cultures across your different regions, across your different capabilities. And I think being able to understand what that is, take the best bits of where it's working really well to be able to scale that across the organization, I think is a sensible thing to do, because with change, with transformation and this transition time, you want to make sure that you are retaining the best bits of what's working and understanding where those hotspots are that need a little bit more attention that aren't working so well. So launching it now, I think, is fantastic, because you can take what's working at Jellyfish and move it over here and vice versa. So I think that's super important. And I think, like I said, it's not about a score, it's about engagement in it, because that will show you how many of our people actually care. And then we can fix those things, right? And also lift up the cultures that are working really well. Because when you see good cultures and people really thriving and enjoying who they're working with, the work they're doing, how they're getting things done, they enjoy their client relationships, you'll naturally see great success in those areas. They are the high performing teams because they've got good cultures. People enjoy what they're doing and where they are and who they're with. So I think being able to identify that and share that more widely across the business this survey allows us to do that as well, because we don't know. Performance management is different in the sense that in Jellyfish, they had a process that was a self-advocacy process around performance. Was it the most objective process? No. Did it always ladder up into the wider business goals? No. And because we are in this period of transition, we have to make sure that everyone knows what success and good looks like. So having clarity on what people's objectives are, being able to see that is really important. Making sure that people understand how their individual goals map up into the wider company goals is also really important. We need that visibility. We need to be able to understand if people can really set SMART goals, because some people look at tasks as goals and objectives, and they're two different things. Tasks might inform how you achieve a goal, but they are different. So looking at our performance management process, the way that I'm evolving it at Jellyfish is we are automating what currently exists. Right now, it's very disparate process, and we're putting it into a system. So we've built this out into our HRIS, and it allows us to capture everything. And the one thing that we are definitely changing is our feedback culture. So it's something that I came in and observed quite quickly when I joined. And whilst feedback happens, it doesn't happen enough. And I think you can't get better if people don't tell you what's working and what's not working. I think that's really important. So part of our performance management culture process is around embedding feedback. So we've rolled out a new framework that we're using across the business. So we have a consistent language across the business. And for the most part, about 80-90% of the brand tech group is trained on this framework as well. So it becomes a consistent language that we're using. So we're all speaking the same language across the group, which I think is fantastic, because it means that we are moving towards measuring performance in this very similar way. Performance management is about automating and being able to capture and track and see what objectives. Because at the end of the year, how fantastic would it be if someone who has been an absolute rock star in the business, and then we say this person has succeeded, they've been promoted, and actually here's what their goals and objectives look like. These are the things that they set out to achieve at the beginning of the year. And then we can really bring it to life. It becomes something really tangible that someone goes, actually, let me look at my objectives in comparison to that. I didn't write mine like this, or mine didn't look like that. And we can really lift those stories up. Whereas right now, those successes are a little bit hidden. And I'm a fan of doing things in public. I think it's really important to celebrate and show off and showcase. It's not bragging if it's a fact. So if someone has been promoted and they've been successful and they've won a new piece of business or been fantastic on a pitch or delivered a great piece of client work. Let's talk about it. Those are the things that I think are inspirational and motivate our people. And that really excites me because those things can be the difference between changing someone who's disengaged to engage, because then they can see it in real life happening to someone that they work next to.
I can really see the power of that. A few years ago, Jellyfish had quite a bit of press in the industry about the fact that they were getting rid of line managers and moving to a different model. Tell me a bit about why the business decided to do that and then why you eventually abandoned the idea.
I think the idea to get rid of line managers was driven by having people focused on the work, just focused on either their craft, managing their clients, and anything that was seen as, and forgive me for the archaic word, pastoral care, was moved over to the people team or the HR team. My own personal view, I don't know if that works, if I'm being really honest with you. I think performance and managing, it starts from the people that you're working with. Whilst I work in HR, I couldn't imagine expecting my team or my direct reports to deliver something and someone else is managing the other parts of how they show up to work, and I don't have any visibility of that whatsoever. I think the need to bring line management back in came in because managers were too far away from the things that were impacting people and how they showed up for work. It is my business to know my teams as much as they want to share about their personal lives and how that could. I want to know when I interview people and I bring them onto my team, I ask them what a good day looks like for them, what a bad day looks like for them, what their non-negotiables are. Now, if I'm not line managing that person, I'm not invested in that because someone else wants to look after that. So if I see that performance dip over time, I'm just focused on one thing and it feels like I'm looking at that performance with blinkers on. And I don't think that's fair for me as a manager to get what I need out of my team. And I don't think it's fair for that individual. So I do feel like having managers own the full employee experience, the deliverables, if someone's going on holiday, if someone's sick, their life events, I think that has to happen with the person managing you because all of that affects how you show up at work. So I don't think you can divorce the two things. And I think it's really important to bring the two things together because there's ownership there and people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. So if the person that's managing my work is one person, but the person managing everything else is somebody else, and I'm having two very different experiences, that becomes, I think, quite confusing for somebody. And whilst I appreciate that not every employee-manager relationship is perfect or fantastic, but I think it's important that if you're managing a team, you have to invest, you have to know your team, you have to know your people, what motivates them, what demotivates them. You can't delegate that to somebody else. I understand the sentiment behind it. And I think in a smaller organization, that might work. But when you're 1,700 people globally, I think it loses the impact that it started out with quite quickly when you start to grow in that way, because people want their managers to care about them. And so if their managers are not charged with managing that part of them and it's just the work, then because one informs the other. It started with the best intentions, but I think moving forward, I think having your managers invested in their own people is the way forward.
Great. Annabelle, thank you so much for sharing so many wonderful things in this conversation. Let's turn to the future. Let's look out front windscreen. What's next for you and what's next for Jellyfish?
For Jellyfish, it's about getting through this transformation, I would say. We are part of a much broader ecosystem. And I think, like I mentioned earlier on, having those country heads, bringing those agencies together regionally is what's next for Jellyfish, navigating that, because that from a very basic level, that's our systems, our processes, our tools. And then more broadly, that's what our go-to-market strategy is. So it's from, are we on Teams or are we on Slack versus a client has a challenge and how do we deploy the whole of the brand tech group, Jellyfish, everyone together to solve our clients' problems. So massive scale there. And for me, it's about making sure that we have the right operating model from a HR point of view that enables the business to do that. So how are we enabling high-performing teams? How are we enabling our culture? Because we are very dispersed as well globally. Our footprint is incredible. But also our models are different across the organization as well. So our operating model needs to mirror that and be flexible as well. Because as our clients change and shift, our organization has to. HR is a support function, but it's also an integral part of the business. You have to have a strong strategic people function that is in charge of that full employee experience. And that's the bit that I care about. What is the experience in the journey that people are going on from before they've even walked through the door to how their performance is managed, what benefits they have access to, how we give feedback around the business. Like all of that is so important. If they go through change, how we navigate the change, how we communicate to people, how we hone that culture. As I mentioned earlier, I think taking those the good bits and scaling them. So for me, it's about understanding what can have the most impact and value quickly. Because yes, you could say we're going to do a big performance management overhaul, but that takes time. And whilst you're in a transition phase, that can feel quite clunky and messy, to be quite frank. So actually just understanding what we've got and doing that well is probably more impactful than going to a whole different system and process. But I think the key right now is developing our people. We have to develop our people. Our clients are going that way. AI is going this way. And we have to make sure our people understand how they fit into that ecosystem. We've got a fantastic opportunity in front of us to develop the best of the best in AI marketeers across all disciplines in the business. So that for me is the key focus.
Fantastic. Sounds like exciting times ahead for you.
Yeah.
Annabelle, thank you so much for taking the time out to join today. It's been so lovely talking to you, and I wish you and the business all the best.
Thank you, Jensen. It's been fantastic speaking to you as well.
You've been listening to Human Powered, the podcast all about creating a high-performing agency or consultancy business. Thanks for tuning in.